The Africa Development Journey episode 1, is here with you. But as you know, the Africa Development Journey episode is your spot. It happens right here, this spot where ideas flow from everyone across the board, whether you're young, whether you're old, regardless of creed or religion or tribe, it doesn't matter. This spot is about Africa's development journey. And Africa's development journey is where has Africa come from and where is Africa heading and what have been the progress made and also the challenges, so that we can collectively move forward with the momentum that we need to move forward with, and at the same time solving challenges. But more importantly, let us be reminded again that the changing climate is here with us. It's already affecting us. It's causing pain and forcing people to leave places and move to others that are not their own. Cyclones, to drought in the East Horn of Africa, to the Sahel, youth unemployment, getting into the labor market without jobs, poverty that is at levels that have never been seen before. The list goes on. Food insecurity, mothers burying their kids before they reach the age of 5. 257 million people going to bed without food, and the list goes on. But what we should be comforted with, is that these challenges are these guys' opportunities. The solutions lie in you and me. But those solutions that lie in you and me need to be discussed in such a way that we have a listening ear to each and every one, because no one is more important than another. A 2-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 60-year-old, an 80-year-old, a 90-year-old, a 100-year-old, a 100-plus-year-old person is just as important as everyone, regardless of where he or she comes from. And in starting this first episode today, you'll be surprised and amazed. An 11-year-old, my daughter, Danielle, challenged me by asking critical questions about Africa and the world, and demanding and also seeking solutions that we need to be able to discuss, so that a 1-year, a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 10-year, a 15-year-old can start to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And this is the intent of Africa's development journey, the sport. Daniel Lafumbom, welcome to the sport. The sport is where Africa's development journey is discussed. But today, though you are at this sport, you will be taking the mantle to interview me, so that we can know what you are doing and also what we are doing, and you can challenge us.
So my first question for you is, by 2050, there's supposed to be 10.5 billion people on this earth. How are we supposed to feed all of them?
Thank you very much, Daniel. To your question, I like to Africanize it, because that is an abundance that we have as a continent. And by Africanizing it, I will use an African proverb, which is also, we have a lot of them. And this African proverb is that if you want to eat an elephant on your path, you have to chop it down into small pieces. What that means is that the solution to addressing food insecurity challenges across the entire world needs to be addressed not just in a way that can produce food, but it needs to be addressed in the different strands that exist within the entire agro value chain. What that means is that how we produce food, how we add value, how we process it, and how we transport to markets. As we're speaking today, each and every year, the world is losing food. 1/3 of the food produced is lost. And that's about 1.3 billion tons of food, which equals to $1 trillion. This is a lot of money. So if they give you a bag of $1 trillion, you cannot carry it. It is money that can can fill the entire space that you are seeing here today. And when you take it down to Africa, the continent is losing 48 billion. So in a nutshell, in simplicity, is that food waste and food lost, more importantly, food lost, is not only losing food that has been produced, but is also losing money. It means that to feed the 10.4 billion people that will be on this planet Earth, in the next 32 or 31 years or so from today, we need to do three things. Value must be added to what is produced. Because the result of these food waste losses is because value is not added. If, for example, someone produces tomatoes, if you go to up country, here in Kenya or any other African country, you will see by the side of the road, tomato being displayed. Very beautiful, ripe, nutritious tomato. But after 2 days, no one buys it and then it gets thrown away. That's food being lost. If you go to the villages, corn is produced, maize. Because it cannot be dry, it gets spoiled, and it's thrown away. And then if you take that, it means that if they were to be dried or turned into flour and preserved, there will be no food lost, and then people will be able to have more food. So adding value to what is produced is very, very important to reduce that. The other aspect is that how we produce food is not just the producing, but there are some aspects that need to be taken into consideration. Our land needs to be fertile. So it needs to have what we call ecosystem services. Water needs to flow on our land. It needs to be fertile. We need to ensure that we have bees. Bees. Bees pollinate. And pollination, bees pollinate 75% of the crops that we depend on. So in a nutshell, to feed the entire world, we must be able to address the aspects that are not only about production, but more about adding value to what we produce and avert the losses that are causing 1/3 of the food that is produced to go to wastage and losses.
Excellent answer. This one, I'm really passionate about this one because it's a big problem. So I know me as a youth, I really don't want to do farming. And most people don't want to do farming. So how can us youth still be participant in the agricultural sector, but not do farming?
Thank you very much, Daniel, for the question. Again, with an African proverb, as I told you, I will be Africanizing the answers to your questions. A chameleon doesn't look only in one direction. It looks in so many directions. What that means is that for the youth to be able to be engaged in the agro value chain, because the agricultural production is just part of the agro value chain. When you produce, you need to add value. You add value, you need to transport. You transport, you need to take it to the consumers and markets. So what needs to be done is that the youth do not necessarily need to be engaged in agricultural production, in farming. What they need to do is they can use their skills. Their skills can range from being an ICT person where they develop applications. Social media today, it was developed by youth. Facebook, where Mark Zuckerberg, Twitter, Instagram, all those things were developed mostly by young people. That then means that they're coming up with a tool that is not necessarily agriculture per se. And even right here in Kenya, there are a group of youth that have come up with an application, an app application called Ibago Pamoja. I'm sure you must have heard about this. And what it does, does, these youth are not farmers. They don't go to the farm. They sit in the comfort of wherever they are, and at the comfort of their cell phone, they develop an app that someone at the comfort of their cell phone can be able to see where food is produced, if it is tomatoes, if it is cassava, if it is maize, and be able to connect those who are producing it and suffering losses to someone who can bring a solar dryer where they can be able to access it, and also connect them to a financing institution like a cooperative or chamas, like they call it here, or Njangi, as they call it in other countries, and right? In West Africa, in Nigeria, in Cameroon. So the point I'm making is that youth have a lot of opportunities to be able to tap into the agro value chain, but they need to find where they are comfortable. If it is markets, they can tap into it. If it is, if they have a skill in law, they can start to see how they can help people develop enterprises around agricultural processing. If they have a skill in marketing, they can start now to see how they can be able to market all these things. But what is more important is that despite the fact that the youth can intervene across the agro value chain, they need to develop skills that are relevant to intervene. For example, you are doing design and you love designing Africa Kitenge. you could still develop your design style in such a way that it passes a message on the opportunities that are found in the agro value chain. That, okay, we are losing food that is worth 48 billion US dollar that can feed the 252 million people that are going to be hungry. So you can design it with an opportunity, with someone lifting a basket of fufu corn and jama in one hand, showing how he's so happy eating that food, and maybe a market where they bought it. And you can actually, as a result of your design, start investing in getting opportunities or creating opportunities, investing in solar dryers or investing in opportunities that can help drive this. So the youth have a lot of opportunity, but they must be willing to listen, to learn, and retool their skills so that they can be relevant in all the facets of the entire agro value chain.
Excellent answer again. And for this question, I know that by the population is booming, and with this so little space on Earth, there's supposed to be so many people, especially in Africa. So how are we supposed to stop them? But not necessarily stop them, but to make space. Because with the population space, how are we supposed to make food, textiles, and production when it's just humans?
Very excellent question. Again, with an African proverb, do not look where you fell, look where you sleep. What this African proverb is telling us is that it is not the number of people that matter. Population in itself is not an issue, but it is the quality of the people. The quality of the people is very, very important, because with quality, it means that you can be able to solve challenges, to turn challenges into opportunities. And so the bigger discussion should be, how do we ensure that the increasing population have the right skills, the right talents, the right aspirations, and the right motivation and inspiration to solve the challenges that we mentioned, food loss, that is costing the continent 48 billion US dollars. So reorientating the mindset of people, especially young people, because as you know, the young people like yourselves are increasing to up to about 35 or even plus, are increasing. They constitute about 60% of the Africa population. So if you just do a simple mathematics, Africa population is 1.2 billion. So you take 60% of that, you're talking about 720 million youth in the continent. But what they need is to retool their skills, to have the right skills, the right attitudes, to develop themselves and be competitive. Because if they do not do that, then they'll become a burden, because they will not be relevant to the realities of the 21st century. I'm sure you know this. Robotics, you've heard about that. AI, artificial intelligence, you already know that. We're talking about big data. You definitely have heard about blockchain. You've surely heard about all those sort of things that are happening now, and the youth must be able to start understanding how do they happen. Like we talk about the value chain, which you ask the question, how can youth be relevant without necessarily having to engage in farming? They must start to learn those skills, to develop the skills that they can be able to market what they produce. They can add value to what is produced. And unless those skills are developed, quantity will mean nothing. It's only quality that means something. And by quality means skill sets that are relevant to make Africa competitive.
Great. Next question. So I know in Europe and North America, stores open 24/7, people are working 40 plus hours. But when they come here, stores are just open from 9 to 7 p.m. And yeah, true. And how can we change that? Because basically 9 to 5, 9 to 7. But they're not open like in North America and Europe, like public holidays. We still see like overtime workers. But here during public holidays, let's say like for Eid, people may start vacationing on Thursday and then come back on like Wednesday.
Very relevant question. And thank you very much for bringing this question. I think it's a sorry state, if I would put it that way, that the continent is facing. But to Africanize the discussion again, there is an African proverb that if you do not brush your teeth, do not say that if you do not brush your teeth, you will say that the food is sour. So, someone gets up in the morning, he just starts eating, he will say the food is sour. If you look at the continent today, the continent is 20 times less productive than their competitors in the global market. That means every $1 that is generated in Africa, at the same time, $20 is generated elsewhere out of Africa. Why? Because the other countries and continents are more productive 20 times as compared to Africa. And what that means is that the laxity in and taking things for granted and sitting and hoping that someone else will come and do something for the continent, that laxity has translated to some of the challenges that we see today. When they say malnutrition, kids in the continent dying before the age of 5, mothers bearing these kids before the age of 5, 257 million people going to bed hungry every day. All this, when you put together, is testament to the fact that there is something wrong somewhere. And something wrong is summed up in one word called attitude. And that attitude means that as individuals, we must be able to change our attitudes towards turning challenges into opportunities. And to do that, we must work hard, because there is this formula called 3 W's, which is work is 8 hours, leisure is 8 hours, and sleep is 8 hours. When you multiply by 3, that's 24. So if you see the way God created the world, he gave everyone 24 hours. That means whether you're a prime minister or a president or 11-year-old like yourself, you all have 24 hours. Even your dad here have only 24 hours. Even though I'm your dad, I only have 24 hours. But it then boils down how we use this time is what will make us achieve more and solve solutions. But if you look at the leisure, there is something called African time, which is a terrible misnomer that have ever existed on this earth. There is nothing like African time. You call a meeting to start at 9, they show up at 12 o'clock. And they say, don't worry now African time. Then wasting time and not building skills, because there is what is called human capital. Human capital is skills, talents, inspiration, initiatives, experiences. When those are nurtured, they constitute 62% of the entire world. But to do that, we must be able to recognize that we have the solutions and the talents, but having a talent is not enough. Talent times effort equals skills. But skills are not enough. Skills times effort equals achievement. And that is the solution that Africa needs to embrace, and more importantly, the youth. And that is the reason why we came up with this aspect of innovative volunteerism. How can you leverage what you have? Like what you are doing here, that's innovative volunteerism, as you told me. Using your time to interview, to get ideas so that you can take it back to your school and also engage your classmates to teach them, to learn from them. And that collectively, doing it to solve a problem, environmental awareness, to ensure that people can understand that they can do little things. That takes time and that takes passion. And with passion and with a focus, we can achieve so many things.
Awesome. So that's why there's I watch YouTube videos, and then when travel bloggers, they go to Africa, they did this phrase always going around, TIA, this is Africa, where they go to an event.
Oh, TIA?
Yeah.
This is Africa.
Yeah.
That's what they say. Anything that goes wrong, this is Africa.
TIA.
TIA.
Yes. Last question. So how come, for example, the British man, for example, they won't go to Disney, they go to Disneyland, and even if they don't go to Disneyland, their life did not end. But how come the African man will still try the way to take ship, go to Disneyland in Florida? Will their life change? No. They're wasting all this money and going to Disneyland, Universal Studios, CN Tower, Canada, Florida, when we can use that money to invest in solar dryers, copy-paste material. How can we stop this?
Thank you very much, Daniel. I love the way you paraphrase the question, and it's a challenge not only for Africa, but I think for everyone who loves Africa. this question that you've asked, they need to really hear about it. There is an African proverb, the last one maybe, which is that the belly, do not allow the belly to make you useless. What that means is that selfishness is destroying the continent. And selfishness makes one blind himself. It's a backward mentality that by being selfish and individualistic, the problems of Africa will be solved and some few people will benefit from it. What that means is the challenges Africa faces today provide opportunities for others. For example, you are doing youth and environment, enhancing your journalistic skills. There is someone who might not be good with the skills of journalism, but he might be good in generating content. And you might not have the content. That means that you can get the content from that person and market it for him. And in that way, that person benefits, you benefit. And that is called collectivism, that alliances, that your challenge is an opportunity for me and my challenge is an opportunity for you. And to collectively see it that way, we will be able now to create originality. But more importantly, the selfishness is resulting to people thinking only about themselves. And when people think about themselves and think that they are succeeding, if you succeed alone, you have actually failed. And that is why through innovative volunteerism, we are driving a logic that engages people to banish selfishness, to banish individualism, and to embrace hopefulness and not hopelessness, and to know that when they combine their skills and talents together, especially focusing in what Africa have got in abundance, its sun, its land, where the too much food that is produced is getting lost every day, they can be able to reverse those losses, create opportunities, and everyone will benefit, and they will make about $1 trillion US. So the answer to your question is simple. Selfishness must be banished and selflessness embraced. Collectivism must be embraced and individualism banished. We must be kind to one another because kindness is genius. And by being kind, we must be able to willing to retool ourselves, to learn new skills, to change the attitudes that by thinking that you succeed alone, you have succeeded, to know that succeeding alone is failure, and that the Africa's failure is an indictment on each and every one of us, regardless of where we are in the world. Africa failure is an indictment on each and every one of us, and therefore we must then come together as a collective force to solve the challenges that Africa faces, and know that selfishness will always continue to drive negativity, to drive poverty, and more importantly, we must embrace mindset change. The mindset change to move away from these dirty, ugly attitudes of being selfish, of hatred, of jealousy. And anytime someone thinks that he can hate someone, he should throw away. It's a thing of the past. I mean, it's so ugly. I don't know why people hate one another. And so your question that you asked is very, very important. Africa should know that what they have is them. Because the biggest opportunity that happens for each and every one of us is to live, is to be living today. And by living is a blessing. But we must always ask ourselves, what are you contributing by living? And the answer is to use yourself to be at service to others. Because without being at service to others, Africa will continue to move down a path that will never have any return. But I have hope in people like you, the over 720 million young people in the continent, and even those who are young at heart. As I always tell you, youthfulness is ideas. Youthfulness is not age. And youthfulness is passion. Youthfulness is responsibility. So thank you very much.
Jealousy na really poor oh.
What did you say?
Jealousy na poor oh.
Jealousy na?
Jealousy na poor.
Na poor? Yeah, jealousy too much. Jealousy is bad, as you say. That which you're using pidgin to do that, right? Say jealousy na poor. So jealousy no fine.
Jealousy no fine, no.
Yes. It was a great pleasure. And thanks for those brilliant, exciting, and inspiring questions.
Thank you.
I'm truly impressed and touched. Thank you. As you just heard from an 11-year-old, asking critical questions, showing her understanding of the issues at 11 years old. That was actually humbling, as well as it was also challenging me that if I am at this age today, and then my daughter, 11 years old, representing so many daughters across the world and across the African continent, sons and daughters who are actually asking these very questions, and sometimes they ask the questions and no one listens to them. What you just heard was not just a clear call for each and every one of us to take responsibility, but it was a call for us to be selfless and not selfish, because collective efforts is what is needed to be able to address the multiplicity of challenges that range from climate change, food insecurity, youth unemployment, to addressing poverty, to lifting people up from the bottom of the pyramid, to giving hope, to giving solutions to each and every citizen across the African continent and even around the world. What you just heard is testament to the fact that we must move away from selfishness and embrace selflessness. What you just heard is that there are opportunities in the agro value chain that each and every youth can be able to embrace. That the agro value chain, what $1 trillion US need each and every one. And the African proverb contextualizing it that a chameleon looks in all directions means whether you have a skill in law, in legal practice, in marketing, a skill in fabricating solar dryers, a skill in journalism, a skill as a seamstress, it doesn't matter. You can retool it to tap into the agro value chain that is worth $1 trillion US. As you just heard, Africans sometimes abandon opportunities and seek it elsewhere. The opportunities are right here in the African continent. And sometimes we forget what we have, which is us. That by our mere existence, it's a big blessing. We should then use ourselves to be of service to solving problems and embracing one another as our brothers and sisters and being one another's keeper, because the challenges are so big for an individual to handle. And that is why we must banish hatred, jealousy, individualism, and selfishness, because it has no place. It's ugly in the 21st century. And we should never embrace such ugly things and backward mentality that by being selfish and individualistic, we can rise up to the top. Actually, if you rise alone, you would have failed. And so let's embrace one another, because that's the recipe to drive the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. The spot was really on spot.
Volunteerism actor and was guided to retool my skills and abilities and work with my colleagues so that together we now offer clean cooking solutions to the community.
The dryer takes shorter time, so their work mostly is rice. That's what they do, so it's going to take a shorter time to dry.
I am a rice grower, at the same time I'm a businesswoman.
There in the farm.
All right, and what would you say to the innovative volunteerism youth who built these dryers?
Okay, to the innovative volunteerism service, yes, we can say God to bless them abundantly, yes, so because they have helped us very much.
All right, thank you very much, Tabitha.
As a youth who has retooled my skills to now make the clean energy briquettes, I am very happy to continue making solutions. And it has helped me myself, because apart from the marketing degree that I got in campus, now I have other things that I can actually make with my hands. And these are things that touch lives. I have extra skills and I am very, very happy to be part of the solution. Thank you.
condemned President Muhammadu Buhari for his speech where he called for an end to demonstrations against police brutality. According to a Reuters witness, a highway leading to the Lagos airport was obstructed by blockades manned by groups of young men demanding cash from motorists. In the east of the city, in the Ibeju area of Lekki, armed men chased away police and several police stations were burned to the ground. The latest unrest follows a bloody response by security forces to demonstrators on Tuesday, where, according to Amnesty International, 12 people were killed. The protests demanding police reform have been ongoing for over 2 weeks now and represent a political crisis for Buhari. And joining us now to establish why this protest led by youth is different and what lessons Africa as a whole can draw from it is Dr. Richard Manang, author of the book Making Africa Work Through the Power of Innovative Volunteerism. Dr. Manang, good evening and thank you so much for your time tonight. Let's just begin here. I mean, these protests have really gripped not only Nigeria, but certainly the globe. And, you know, a lot of people have been talking about them. And the issue of police brutality is certainly not new, particularly when it comes to this country. What is, you know, what do you make of these EndSARS protests?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I will start off with an African proverb which goes that little by little grows a banana. What this proverb means is that if we do not appreciate progress, we can never make progress. Rome was never built in one day. And what this means is that we must appreciate the democratization process that Africa has come of date. And so when you look at what has transpired across Africa from a democratic process, over 60% of countries from data is showing that Africa has actually moved forward. The second aspect, to put things in perspective, is that when you look at the deprivation anywhere in the world, the despair of joblessness is actually the biggest deprivation that happens anywhere, whether it is the pain of a father or mother unable to buy food, to put food on the table, or it is the pain of a mother or father unable to send kids to school, or it is the pain of over 12 million youth who graduate into the labor market in the entire continent, competing for lesser jobs, or it is the pain of the changing climate that is plunging people to seek sanctuaries in places not their own. This is what is causing despair. And this is not just for the youth, but it's for everybody in the continent. So what needs to happen is a different kind of narrative where we move from confrontation to a conversation, where these young people, because most of them were actually born after the 1990s, and they grew up in a different era. And so they have a different way of doing things. They have different perspectives. They have different solutions. And so bringing them to the table to converse around how to devise solutions around these challenges of food insecurity, challenges of unemployment, of joblessness, is what is needed in the entire continent today.
And when you look at these, you know, these protests that we have been seeing in Nigeria, what makes them different?
The reality is, when you look across the entire continent today, as I've said, the young people across the entire continent are tech savvy. They grew up in a different era. They understand the world differently as it was in the 1960s, as it was in the 1970s or 80s. And what does that mean? It means that they have a different way and a different thinking, which is great. They are over 60% of the entire continent population, and they are Africa's sovereign capital. And what that means is that we must see them through the solution space, because when they are made to know that they're solution providers, they can be able to use the tech savviness, their energy, their creativity, to be able then to start solving these challenges. And to your question, what is making protests different anywhere across the continent and elsewhere, even across the globe, is the despair of joblessness that I've mentioned, is the despair of hunger, the despair of people, not just youth, everybody, especially with COVID, that has actually added to this, with projections showing that job losses in the continent could actually reach 50%. And Africa could actually get into recession, which is going to be the first after 25 years. So the point is that when you combine these challenges with pandemics or emergencies like COVID, and on top of it, climate change, we might just see words. But the point is we must turn this challenge into an opportunity by recognizing that Youthfulness is usefulness. Youthfulness is value. And engage this youth, because there is something that we miss across the continent most of the time, which is an inspired and passionate human being can actually turn a challenge into an opportunity. And therefore, we should never ever put youth and problem in one sentence. What we need is to put youth and world and solutions in one sentence and inspire them to see themselves as the catalyst to devise solutions to address these challenges. And I go back to the same point again. We need a conversation with the young people, not a confrontation, because state doesn't have all the repository for solutions. Neither do youth have all the repository for solutions. So state and non-state actors must be able to work together. And more importantly, the youth constitute the biggest non-state actors constituency. So to drive any meaningful transformation in the continent, for the betterment of the continent, they must be at the center of also providing the solutions.
And I mean, Dr. Richard, it's not only a conversation that really appears to need to be happening here, but also not excluding them from positions of leadership. Because when you look at, across the continent in particular, we are seeing quite a lot of older leaders, and more young people are not finding their way into these positions of leadership. And certainly young people, as you say, are sending a message, and the message is clear. They want to be part of the solution, but certainly they should also be in leadership positions.
The reality is that the era of leadership seen only from a political perspective is long gone. Leadership is personal responsibility. If you cannot lead yourself, you cannot lead anybody else. And therefore, inspiring youth to know that you must not necessarily only be in political office to be a leader is important. That if you can be able to use your passion and turn your passion to profits, turn your skills and talents to devise solutions from the challenges we're facing today, that is leadership. And what we need to also understand is that the era of government developing policy, implementing policy is long gone. So each and every one of us must become a leader. And this is the narrative that Africa urgently needs today, because when you look at these young people, they're already leaders in their own rights. When you look at the solutions they're coming up with, they come up with innovative ideas, whether it is in telecommunication, where they're devising mobile applications all across the entire continent today. That is visible. Whether we're looking at innovations and ideas, they have them. But what has been missing in the entire African continent, and I think this is quite very, very important, is narrative. The narrative of Africa has been about challenges, not about solutions. It's always been about challenges. Whether we're talking about challenges of mothers who go to bed hungry, which is true, 257 million of them. But we hardly hear a narrative of youth turning their skills and talents into devising solutions that can be able to reduce the post-harvest losses that are costing the continent $48 billion US. We hardly hear the narrative that if we are able to inspire youth and motivate them and guide them in a very structured way and invest in them, we can then be able to actually turn waste, agricultural waste, to fuel briquettes that will replace the charcoal that is actually causing deforestation. We don't hear the narrative that if we are to leverage on communal cooperatives, which are in every community in the African continent, we can actually start to tap into different kinds of finance. And this narrative of challenge and victimizing youth and talking about how youth are victims of circumstances, instead of coming up with a formidable narrative of youth as solution providers and inspiration and inspiring them, is what needs to change. Because if we don't do that, what will happen is that the sovereign capital, in this case, which are these youth, 60% of the population, we might not be able to unleash and tap that potential in the youth to address these challenges of food insecurity, challenges of the unemployment, and challenges of mothers going to bed without putting food on the table. So we need an urgent change in narrative. What I call the urgent, fierce urgency of now for Africa is a change of narrative from challenges to solutions. We talk problems, we talk challenges. It's time now to start talking solutions, and youth are actually the solution providers that need to be on the center stage.
And talking about, what needs to happen at the table to ensure that, things move forward, even talking about self-leadership. But I also want us to look into this. The president of Nigeria, has spoken out and called for calm and not touching on what you're talking about, which is critical, the issue of responding with violence, the issue that we then saw, culminating into violent clashes at that Lekki toll gate. Do you think he missed an opportunity when it comes to really addressing and getting the situation under control? Because we're still seeing protests continue to this day.
Africa have a population of over 1.2 billion citizens, and each and every one of us who is from this continent have a responsibility to be able to discuss with the youth. It is not only those in power, or presidents or prime ministers or political leaders, to talk about what needs to happen to calm the youth down in any part of the continent. We have a sole responsibility as citizens of this continent, and even citizens of the global community, to be able to inspire youth, to tell them that the approaches that cause the problems that we face today in the continent, whether it is problems of food insecurity or problems of joblessness, cannot be the same approaches that can be used to address the same problems. And therefore, we need to think out of the box, because I always say this most of the time, and I put this in my book, we cannot address the current challenges by using the same approaches. So we must develop new models that make the current approaches that perpetuate these challenges obsolete. What does it mean? Each and every one of us must inspire one another, especially the young people, must guide. We must all take responsibility to not only wait for political leaders to speak, but to also speak in inspiring youth, to speak in motivating them, and at the same time ensure that we start seeing them as solutions rather than as part of the problem, because they're actually the solutions that can be able to ensure that we achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and actually achieve Agenda 2063, which is to create the Africa we want. We cannot create the Africa we want when the youth are not at the center. But one important point, which is very key, is that youth is not static. And I think this is important, because those who are youthful today, in 10 years' time, they will move out of the age bracket of youth. So if we don't start seeing ourselves, regardless of age, as solution providers, because in 10 years' time, where will those who are youthful today be? And there is an African proverb that does that where you will sit when you are old will show where you stood in youth. So where will the youth of today stand when they're old? I believe they will want to stand where the solutions are, and therefore seeing self as a solution provider and taking into consideration that leadership is also personal responsibility. And just imagine 1.2 billion African citizens playing the leadership role in their respective capacities, regardless of what they do. Africa will be a first world.
Dr. Richard Manang, thank you so much for your time tonight. You've certainly given us something to think about, particularly as you say, self-leadership is quite critical. And as you say, youth is not static. That is really a very important point to end off this discussion. Thank you so much. We do appreciate your time. That was Dr. Richard Manang, who's the author of Making Africa Work Through the Power of Innovative Volunteerism.
Climate change is not just an environmental issue. Climate change is a health issue. Climate change is a food security issue. Climate change is an economic issue. Climate change is a national and regional and global security issue. And more importantly, climate change is about jobs for our young people. Climate change is about helping mothers put food on the table and more money in more pockets. Climate change is about justice and equality. But what we are seeing is injustice and inequality, and we cannot take this lightly. And that's why voices matters. Innovative volunteerism voices, innovative volunteerism, an incubation space that is inspiring and ushering young people into solution spaces, helping them to turn their passions into profit. It's seeing them devise and develop innovations, simple innovations that are helping turn challenges of mothers in communities into opportunities. That's what innovative volunteerism voices is all about. It's about solutions. It's about coming together and inspiring one another to all become solution providers to turn the climate challenge into a climate opportunity. And that's what we call climatepreneurship, where young people are creating enterprises. They are creating ingenuity. They are moving climate challenge into opportunities that are helping them create businesses and put more money in their pockets as they help mothers put food on the table. That's what Innovative Volunteerism Voices is all about. On this channel, Innovative Volunteerism Voices, we see solutions undertaken by young people. We see graduates from universities retooling their skills, turning their skills into opportunities. That's what you will listen and that's what you will see. Here we speak.
Whatever opportunity that comes, you have to use it and seize it with your two hands, right? Yes. Excellent, excellent. Great. This is James.
It's not always good to be in your comfort zone and think you are okay where you are. You
Right.
always have to come out and explore something new.
Yes.
I came out of my comfort zone. This is not my fault of experience. I came
Right.
out of my comfort zone. I learned how to make briquettes, solar barriers, and I'm happy I'm contributing my own concept towards climate change actions.
No, this is
So
really
the
impressive.
youth, the youth should come out of their comfort zone and then make do with every opportunity that comes their way, and I'm sure they will appreciate all the glad to come out of their comfort zone and learn something. Who knows? Maybe what you are doing now is not your fault. It's not what you are actually meant to do. When you come
Right.
out of your comfort zone and you learn something new, you might develop interest and you might solve bigger issues with coming out from your comfort zone and learning something. So I'm really glad to be part of everything of the and I'm really glad to be
Excellent. This is good. You mentioned something. Comfort zone, right? You know, the reality is that what I've learned is good things come through hard work and perseverance. And the first thing that you need is passion. So I usually put it this way. So the young people of Africa and even the entire world, they need three things. Firstly is attitude. So attitude is quite very simple. The ability to be humble, to listen, to take instruction and guidance. And once you develop that attitude to learn new things, you will achieve more. And part of attitude is to avail yourself when needed. Because you guys, you're not doing this for money. You came voluntarily. That's why it's innovative volunteerism. You voluntarily avail yourself and use your time and your talent to be turned to skills by applying effort and use that to do something innovative. So you volunteer yourself to bring innovation, the innovative volunteerism. The second aspect is a skill, right? Which I'm going to round off by asking the interpretation. So you know, when I hear young people, they say, okay, we want jobs. That's fine. Where are the skills? And actually, the best premium you have is not money in a bank or a car or a building. It's your skill. Because with a skill, you can do something and make money. Without a skill, you cannot do anything. And with a skill, you can solve a problem because the problems are disguised opportunities. So when there is a problem, you should be excited. And the excitement should be to develop a solution to solve that problem. And I call that, I usually say that we need to become annoyed with poverty. And when we become annoyed with poverty, then we will generate solutions that can solve and drive and keep poverty on the run. The last one, which I think is quite more very important, is that when you have that right attitude, you have the skill. The last one, which I know you guys already know, is never to do something to benefit you alone, but to do something to benefit others. And that's selflessness, that's kindness. And that's what you guys are doing here. A mother in a village, either in Kumasi or in Kosombo or anywhere, who is producing cassava and losing it because she cannot be able to dry it, or even when she dries it, the quality is compromised, she's not going to have an asset solution. So you guys are providing solutions, climate change solutions, and also showing that you can turn challenges into investment opportunities. So this is quite really excellent, and I think that from what you guys are telling me here today, innovative volunteerism is no longer a word. It's action. It's climate action. So this is really excellent. So them before we run off, you through innovative volunteerism develop this climate action enterprise. You have an amazing team here, which I think you guys are going to be transformational, not just for Canada, but for Africa and the world. What do you have to say about your team and also about Simon, who is a product of innovative volunteerism that had to come from Nigeria to come and train you guys here. What do you have to say very briefly so that at least someone can understand? And then how do you see you guys moving forward? You produce the briquettes, you produce the solar dryers. What is the ultimate end product? And how do you intend to sustain this with your team? Okay. So many questions, but brief answers.
So first of all, I'd like to, in your presence, say a very big thank you to my team, because this has been made a reality, not because of me, but because of them, their effort, their availability, their skill, their contribution, and also, of course, your guidance and mentorship. So, in the long run, we also want to say a big thank you to Simeon Akikayo, our colleague, innovative volunteer, who had to travel from Nigeria all the way to come and then train us. And I'm sure our team would testify that he was of very great help. They also do a great job in Nigeria solving climate issues.
Right.
For us here as Climatepreneurship Solutions Ghana, the ultimate is to be in to have a line or an agro chain.
Right.
So at the end, agro value chain. Yes. So not from only production. So from production, we look at how we are going to store the food, and then we are looking at how we are going to add value and then process it. And at the end of the day, so we are going to provide quality product into the market. So for us, for a product, which is our main target, is cassava, because cassava is like the gold of Africa.
Right.
So
I call it an insurance crop.
Yes.
Exactly.
So we take the cassava, for instance, from the process where we grow it till it's harvested, till it's dried in the solar dryer. So in the value addition, solar dryer adds value by drying it without contaminating it.
Right, and reducing it to the environmental content.
Exactly. Then from there we move to milling it into a new product, which is the cassava flour. So ultimately, at the end of the chain, we are looking at coming out with a product. So that is going to be obviously EBA Foods. So we have Climatepreneurship Solutions providing EBA Foods. So cassava flour, neatly packaged, which of course we have already gone into the market to do little research and then gotten the perspective of people and then the product they look. And the cassava flour, interestingly enough, can be used for over 200 delicacies. So you can make cassava bread, you can make cassava biscuits, cassava cake, and even mix it cassava beer, and even mix it with other breeds. So it's not a standalone solution. It's a solution that falls in line with a lot, and so it's and in the process, when we are expanding, or whilst we are expanding, we are bringing on more use, creating more opportunities for people, and then private climate action ultimately. So
that's excellent. I think from where you mentioned the cassava flour, when someone buys it, he buys briquettes to go cook.
Yes.
So even with the final product, you still have a solution to make sure that at least they turn it to the form that can actually make the stomach more happier.
Exactly.
Right? Excellent. So in ending, what do you have to tell the young people out there, and how did you create Climatepreneurship, and how does this continue to drive and engage young people?
So, like I said earlier, take every opportunity to be guided and mentored. So the key thing here is be open. And one thing I've learned from my team is being able to take
conversation. Right. I think Tesla probably ends up doing 10% of that, roughly.
Let's say 2050, we have